On today's episode, we continue from last week's episode, Wake Up Leaders, The Future Demands a New Approach. I have part 2 for you today, and this is a special episode of Leadership Revisited. I'm giving you key insights and takeaways from previous leadership episodes that I've done. Now, you know that I talk about rebel leadership, and I want to qualify. Great leadership and good leadership is rebel leadership, and it doesn't mean being a crazy person. What it means is stepping away from a model of leadership that has been embedded and normalized in our system and doesn't work. And it also means pointing out when there are leaders following a style that is inappropriate, outdated, and ineffective. And that's to ensure that it doesn't get entrenched and inserted back into our ecosystem. Not just our business ecosystem, our society, our politics, our culture. We don't want to normalize bad leadership models like we've done for so many decades. This episode aims to give you insights and guidance on great leadership takeaways and what it means to be a great leader. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it.
How do you cultivate a culture where team members feel confident to take risks, innovate, and challenge the status quo?
Well, I think that it is all about, the leader or the leaders setting the tone. And it's some of the things that I mentioned in the last question, but really like to illustrate that is creating that environment and that safe space where mistakes are not disciplined and there's no punitive action for mistakes, that you create the environment because it's time to learn.
Yeah.
And really providing the structure. So the culture, there's so many things that play into culture. It's the norms of how people interact with one another.
Yeah.
It's also the leader taking, or the leaders taking the steps to take the responsibility and ownership that's theirs to strike and set that tone.
Yeah.
And it really does, if I had to distill it all down to the simplest terms, it really is being in a place or providing a place where people feel safe, cared for, and supported.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple because I remember I had been asked to give a talk about leadership, and it was for people that aren't necessarily, you probably wouldn't even self-identify as a leader because they don't have a title of leader. And I actually say, no, everyone is a leader if you think about what the foundation of leadership is. And I thought, what do I need to tell them? Well, I really told them 4 things. And it was, these are the most important things in leadership, was to invest in others, stand in their belief gap, make sure they feel supported and cared for, and that they can show up authentically and be who they are.
Yeah.
And again, that sounds so simple, but every action has to strive and aspire to do that, because without that, personally, I've been on the receiving end of that in my early corporate days.
Yeah.
And then I always had to, well, even throughout my corporate days, I had to make a decision, which I did, that even though I'm not being led in a way that I want to be led, I'm going to lead differently for my team. And obviously, when I created my own company, I was able to have the freedom to carry that through because I found it worked much better.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what strategies or practices do you employ to help team members see beyond their current capabilities and imagine greater possibilities within their organization?
So I'm glad that you asked that question. What I want to say is that, I think that's something that so many people that I am working with and working amongst right now, we are so aligned on that.
Yeah.
And so Sal Rometta, who was here a couple of weeks ago in the Creating Leaders series, we talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
And he spoke about that in his interview, is breathing possibility into others. And I think that goes to what I said just in the answer to the last question, was standing in people's belief gap, which is people may not even envision themselves to be able to be more or something. And to be able to breathe possibility into them, I think that you have to invest in them, number one.
Yeah.
Right? You have to invest in them and actually care about where they're going or what they want to achieve, and actually inquire about what are your long-term goals, or what do you see yourself. And when you see someone who has a very small vision of what's possible for them, is to continue to plant those seeds and encourage them to be able to see that they can be much more, and that possibility, like breathe that possibility into them, that they can achieve more, be more. If it's within your company that they're working for you, if they're working for me, and beyond that, right? And that's, as I said, those 4 tenets of leadership is really doing that for someone.
Yeah.
And what Sal and I were talking about a couple weeks ago was, and I've said this over and over again, that is actually the most rewarding part for me, and he agreed, of leadership, is seeing somebody actually become more than they imagined. Like, that's the most rewarding part.
Yeah.
So that's always my intention, is to instill that.
Challenging the norms, yes. There are certain parts of me that I have very well established that are, and that I've always felt, especially as a safety professional, as a leader of people, that you have to know certain things about yourself that you will stand on, irrespective of what will happen.
Yes.
That you believe that so much that people know that if she's there, if she's doing that, there's no question about where she stands. And I've had those certain things of knowing within me that have just been completely firm. But then getting deeper into what you're saying, that really knowing and saying, and I thought about this at another podcast that I was doing, and the intro of myself, and I thought, they may want to hear the whole kind of rundown that you could see on my LinkedIn or whatever, but that's not who I am. That's not who I am. That's what I've done. And it's part of what's made me who I am. But that's not who I am. And that's even different. That's even deeper to me than knowing that I stood for certain things. It's going deeper and saying that I am this person.
Yes.
And I am, and being comfortable, literally, in who you are. And finding gratification in that. It's a shift of finding gratification in that versus what you have in kind of corporate world that's achieve, or education that's achieve. It's when you're in yourself. And understanding even a fraction of that is an achievement in and of itself in reality.
Absolutely. Oh my God, there's so much to unpack there. Okay, so first off, and I'm sure you'd be in agreement with me on this. In order to be a great leader, you have to know yourself. And it's not a one and done thing. It's an evolution. It's like you've got to look inside. You've got to reflect. And that escapes so many leaders. Again, if I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I want to give them a pass on that, it's kind of not baked in to the structure, right? So we need to change that, right? But it's also, as you said, knowing who you are and getting the gratification in that, and it makes you a better person. And also, being able to get to that is what ends up really, truly making you happy, because you have all of these people have built these levels of success, as you said, next thing, achieve, that are miserable. Miserable. It's what society says is success. It's what is marched around, what people think, what's baked into. We want this next thing, and there's no meaning behind it whatsoever, because it's not about who you are, it's about what you did, and it's about what you do. So the havings and the doings instead of who you are and what, just being. And sometimes when I speak about this, people are like, yeah, but that doesn't make money. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.